Welcome to Wildlife Wednesday. This is the first episode. For those who watched the introductory video last week, and today is the 8th of January 2020, so for anybody who watched the introductory video last week, you'll remember that I made a couple of promises. I promised to speak about rivers, and in particular, my local river, the Dodder. I also promised to speak about the wildlife that inhabits the river or lives along the edges of the river. In particular, I promised that I would speak about kingfishers. I'm going to speak about kingfishers by showing you one or two pictures that I've taken over the years. I'm going to talk in a very general way because I'm not an expert. I'm not a great ornithologist or anything like that. My knowledge comes from exploring the wild and the wildlife that inhabit the wild places. So to begin with, the piece of video that you're looking at shows the beautiful valley of Glenismole. Up to the left, Kipure Mountain, where the Dodder actually rises. It's also where the Liffey rises, the Liffey being the main Dublin River. But that's a story for another day. Right now, as we pan down through the beautiful valley of Glenismole, I want to talk about the Dodder. The top of Dodder Road, where the river flows under Rathfarnham Bridge and down along to the Weir, and a section of the river that I regularly frequent because it was on Lower Dodder Road that I grew up. Many moons ago, I have to admit, but this is where I played as a child, where my friends would gather and we'd float rafts down the river, falling into it more often than not. We swam in it, we fished in it, we did all sorts of things, played on its banks, and nowadays I frequent the banks in the hope of photographing the wildlife of the river. The kingfisher in particular is a very popular bird with photographers along this stretch of the river. For some strange reason, and I did mention it last week, that I would always advise people in the past, if you were going to photograph kingfishers, you needed to use a hide, or what the American friends call a blind, but you needed to be hidden. They're a very secretive bird, and you had to be just as secretive as they were while photographing or filming them. You really needed to get a license from the Parks and Wildlife Service and get yourself close to a nest site. Oh, by the way, for those who don't know, you must have a license to photograph any species of bird near a nest site. Otherwise, you're breaking the law. I know a lot of people are not aware of this, so for the amateurs out there who have never photographed wildlife before and are just taking up the hobby, get yourself a license if you intend to go near a nest site. But as I said, over the last couple of years, I've abandoned this advice to a certain extent because this stretch of the Dodder River has become, I don't know, it's a haven for the birds, but not only that, they seem untroubled by the presence of humans. I would have always thought of kingfishers as a very secretive bird, unwilling to come anywhere near humans. But certainly on this stretch, that's no longer the case. Now, I believe that worldwide there are approximately 120 species of kingfisher. Unfortunately, here in Ireland, we have just one. And I have to say that it's probably the most beautiful of all of the kingfishers. Don't tell anybody I said that. I'm biased, you see. Biased towards the river and the bird. But I will say that many people who walk up and down along the river on a regular basis recently have become, and when I say recent, over the last 2 or 3 years, they have become accustomed to photographers trying to capture an image of this beautiful bird. And they are aware of the fact now that the kingfisher is quite a common species, but most of them never get a chance to see them because, again, as I said last week, what most people see is a flash. Just a flash. By the way, the kingfisher doesn't sound like that. It's just a flash of blue, beautiful electric blue down the middle of the back. And I remember meeting a cousin of mine who lived right here on Dodder Road, about 5 or 6 years ago. Sadly, he's passed away since. But he was walking down the river as he did every day. And I happened to bump into him close to a nest site that I photographed on a regular basis. And he said, "My God, I've never seen one." Well, I said, "You stay with me now for a couple of minutes and I'll show you the kingfisher." And believe it or not, within 2 minutes, he had seen his first kingfisher. He was absolutely fascinated, as are all of the people who nowadays pass by this particular spot along the river. As I said, we have only the one species in Ireland. Other countries have many. And there are, after all, 120 species worldwide. But we kind of like our beautiful kingfisher. He's certainly my favourite bird. The one difference between the male and female, by the way, for those who don't know, and I have to give tribute to, sadly, an old friend who passed away a long time ago. Well, not that long ago, 2013. Eamon de Beauclair. Eamon was the first one who pointed out to me the difference between the male and the female kingfisher. And it's a very slight difference. The lower mandible, the bottom half of the female beak, is orange-red. Other than that, male and female are identical. So I'm going to talk about the Dodder I'll talk a lot more about the Dodder and the history and where it rises and how it enters the sea and everything else at a later date. But for now, I just wanted to mention its importance at this particular point to the kingfisher. Now, there are many other species that frequent the river. The most popular ones amongst photographers being the dipper and the grey heron. The most popular mammal, the fox, is seen daily. Yes, during the day, although generally considered to be a nocturnal species, foxes have come to this particular section of the river as long as I can remember, to relax. I was going to say in the sun, but this is Ireland after all, it could be lashing rain. But they do come here just to lie out in the whatever weather happens to be there, we'll put it that way, okay? And they are regularly photographed, not just by photographers in particular, but by people just passing by. Oh look, there's a fox. People are surprised to see a fox during the day, just sitting there along the bank of the river. But as I said, it's been a common sight for a long time as far as I'm concerned. I'll talk a lot more about the Dodder and the history and where it rises and how it enters the sea and everything else at a later date. But for now, I just wanted to mention its importance at this particular point to the kingfisher.